Kitzer, in that last one, we said, Yamshich, the Ruach Shtus, we continue to say that the Ruach Shtus, Mechase, Rak al Midos, the Nefesh Elokis, that this whole long saga about the fog and the ability of this spirit of impurity, the Nefesh Bahamas, to cover over and make you insensitive to the call of your godly soul, it's not as bad as it sounds. It only has power to do that up until and including the midos of the Nefesh Elokis, i.e. the parts of the Nefesh Elokis that are measured and limited and go into the body. But not the atzmusa ve'etzem hiskashrus, but it cannot cover over a Jew's essential connection to godliness. And what's the difference? Is that when something will come along and it will try to deter you in an essential way, you'll recognize that it's ripping you away from your essential connection. All of a sudden, the fog has no power against you. Hashem grants it power up to a certain point. This like insensitivity and this foolishness that we go around thinking we're just as Jewish as we were the day before and we do whatever we want. That's only to a certain degree, up to a certain measured, limited aspect of the soul's connection with the body. When it comes to the essential connection, in other words, that you will be severed, i.e. like a sin that's connected with denying the existence of Hashem in truth, or a sin which is called kares, and you realize that you're going to get cut off, suddenly you are freed from this nefesh bahamis. It cannot overpower and stand in front of a Jew's essential connection. That's why we see that Jews have this power called Mesiras Nefesh. Even if you weren't particularly straight A Jew, suddenly at the time of need, your soul just comes out like a lion, because there's at certain levels there's nothing that can deny its existence in your body. Okay, so that's what we said up until now.
So can we set up like these like task forces to make Jews realize that?
That's called Yeshiva Tomchei Tumimim, Yeshiva Tumimim Derech Sfas. That's the task force. Yeah, but ultimately, yes. The answer is yes. That's what the Rebbe did. He created these Chabad houses. He created these centers all over the world that are like a task force to remind a Yid who he is and how do you do it. They go around teaching Hasidus everywhere, reminding a Jew what he's all about.
Pretty successful.
As opposed to Stalin putting his people, that also reminds us what we're all about. We'll remind them by bringing out their Jewish soul through Hasidus in a positive way. All right, so we'll go on now into Os Hey. That's it? We lost him? Listen, it was good to have him when we did.
Park kangaroo. Hop here and there.
Hine. So we're going on into Os Hey, the final Os. Kishem shaya hataya lamata min adas. Just like you have this leaning, because the word shtus we said means to lean in one direction or the other. So just like it can lean below intellect, lamata min adas. Shunikri b'shem shtus de klippa, we call that shtus of klippa, of the other side. Hine kamo ken yeshno ataya l'mayla min adas. You can also have shtus, which goes above das. In other words, also crazy, but it's not crazy in the sense that it goes below rationality and doesn't listen to the rationality.
Not certified.
But it goes crazy beyond rationality. It's sort of like a chassid. Who's a chassid? He goes lifni mishur asadin. He does things that he doesn't have to do. He doesn't make any sense either. And it's also called shtus, but it's shtus in the side of kedusha. Yeah.
I heard Rabbi Gavni say in Chayalo, he said, to be a chassid, you have to be a gezunta mishugana.
Okay, got it. Who's shtus to kedusha? This is called shtus on the side of holiness. Va'inyan hu dehine amrazal. So how do we work this out? What is this all about? The sages said in Ksubos, the Gemara that we're learning presently, Amru alav al Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi. Who's Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabbi Eloi? You can see him from here. That's the beauty of this seat. Yeah. Oh, him. Yeah. He's right there. Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi.
Who is he?
He's a Tana, and he's one of the 5 students of Rabbi Akiva, Chaver with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai there, serious man. So it says that they said about him, Shaya notel bad shel hadas, he would take one stick of myrtle, u'meraked lifnei hakala, and dance before the kala. You can only imagine what that looked like. How do you dance with myrtle? But I'm sure it was done professionally. V'chule. And then it says Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. He was already a talmid of the direction of the shita of Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi. And it says Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak merachid atlas. He would dance with 3. And what does Rashi say over there? Shalosh badin. How do you dance with 3? Not so simple. Zorek achas u'makabel achas. He would throw one and catch one. That's called juggling. Rashi. So you have this mamish heavy-duty mega sage standing in front of some kala. It sounds like he would do this, at weddings. He had his wedding shtick, and he would dance, juggling hadas, myrtle branches in front of the kala.
I once saw a billionaire do the silliest thing in front of a kala.
Okay, there you go.
It's a thing.
He was in the shita of Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi.
Yeah.
Amar Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera says, "Kamach sivlan saba." Rabbi Zera saw this activity from Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak, and he said, honestly, it's below the dignity of the sages. What's going on here? This is not okay, not acceptable behavior. Let some billionaire dance in front of the kala, but not a Talmud Chacham of your stature. Right? So he says, I'm pointing to you because you mentioned the story.
No, I know.
Alavai, you'd be that billionaire. So he says, you're embarrassing us. And then Rashi says, what does it mean you're embarrassing us? Shemezalzel b'kavod Talmidei Chachamim. You're disgracing the honor of a Talmud Chacham. V'noeg kalosh ros ba'atzmo, and you're conducting yourself like with frivolity. That's not the way of a Talmud Chacham. These guys would go around, they had robes on and cloaks, and they weren't allowed to have a stain on their garments, and they were like basically Jedi. Can't start having juggling Jedi. It just doesn't go.
Juggling.
Was that punishable by death?
So juggling, imagine juggling.
Yeah, you don't want it. You don't want it. Kinach nafshe. How does this saga conclude? When he passed away, when Reb Shmuel bar Yitzchak passed away, Absi kamuda denora bein didei lekuli alma v'chule. It says a pillar of fire surrounded his grave, and it stood between him and the rest of the world. It's basically.
It happened here?
This was not Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi. This was Reb Shmuel. Rabbi Yitzchak, but probably happened around here. And he said that so this is a major sign of righteousness. When you're the one that a pillar of fire surrounds your grave and separates you from the rest of the world, it shows you're higher than the whole rest of the world.
Not a bad sign.
Not a bad sign. Amar Rabbi Zera, Ahanile shute l'saba. His first line was, "Oi." I guess it helped him. Those myrtle branches. Shute l'saba. So what does it mean, shute l'saba? So he says a few perushim. Shut, first of all, shel hadas. Shut means a branch of hadas. So he said it really helped him, that branch. Shem merakid, but that he danced with, says Rashi. Amri le, some people say that's not what Rabbi Zera said. He said shtuse l'saba. He didn't say shute, he said shtuse. What shtuse? Shamisnagid kashota. That it helped him that he acted like a crazy fool. Wow, I see that I was wrong. In other words, it's good to act like a crazy fool. It helped him to say. The Amrile, some people said, no, that's not what he said. Shitase l'saba. There's 3 explanations. What he actually said. There's 3 versions. Some people say shitase means his shita. Says Rashi, shitaso minhago, how he conduct himself. His shita, his minhag, his direction. They're all kind of leaning to the same place. Whatever he did, crazy, was worth it. The shtus zu, this type of shtus, hayu l'mayla min hadas. It's also called shtus, but it's a shtus which is beyond knowledge, beyond intellect, beyond rationality, not below it. Right? When you do something that doesn't make sense, because the connection between your brain and your heart is severed, so you do all kinds of things that the brain is begging you not to do because they're going beyond the pale of the godly soul, right? They're going into a realm of just animalistic behavior. But this is called shtus l'mayla mitam v'das. He's a Talmud Chacham, right? And even the Talmud Chachamim, who are generally going around, what is it called Talmud Chacham? It means he learns from Chochmah. Also, the Torah is called Chochmah. Chochmah is also rational and has a certain limitation in that sense. And then it tells you this is the punishment, this is the crime. This is the action, this is the reward. In other words, it's all very rational and balanced. Even in Torah, there's also called the realm of rationality. So, but there's something called shtus l'mayla min hadas. You can go sort of beyond the Torah. Nowhere there's no halacha. Maybe there is now, but there's no, because he did it. But there's no halacha that says you used to go dancing with myrtle in front of a kala, right? He came and he realized what was going on. He sort of took stock of what the situation was, and his godly soul bubbled over the mind, because the godly soul is not limited to mind. And remember, mind, we're going to get into that presently, it's an encasement. It's the midos, the measured extent of what the godly soul is about. But it's not the totality of the godly soul. It's a kli, a vessel, that the godly soul utilizes to perform its duties. But it's not the prime totality of the godly soul. There's parts of the godly soul which are beyond investiture into the mind or into any finite attribute. So he was basically accessing something which was more essential to his soul than his mind when he suddenly went crazy for God.
So between that mind and the essential soul is the intelligence. Is it there?
No, I would say the mind is the intelligence. That's what I meant to say.
It's not part of the mind can change swiftly, but intelligence, it's a little bit deeper thought, isn't it?
The mind can change, but intelligence, I'm not sure. I mean, I kind of know, I think I know what you're talking about, like the difference between thought and intelligence, machshava and seichel.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're saying that, in general, what I was saying is that even seichel, even intelligence, is still a garment in some capacity for the soul. True. There's something called thought, speech, and action, and the thought there is not intelligence, it's just thought, and that's what we normally call the garments. But I know you've said in this class a couple times at least, when we talked about even the essential 10 soul powers, which are officially not the garments, they're above the garments, they too are an aspect of garment. Because the soul still has to come into a suit, a set of powers which clothes it in some way. Maybe the clothing is a different aspect of clothing. We say the difference between, let's say, your body versus your clothes. Even your body, however, is a type of clothing for your soul. So it's a limitation where your soul has to come into and sort of acclimate to wielding itself through certain powers. And the top of those powers is intelligence. But beyond that, there's still a soul. Even beyond intelligence, there's still a soul. And he was essentially connecting to that. And that's what we were saying before as well. Like that is the part of your soul which cannot really be covered over by the blemish of the animal soul. Right? So while shtus, on one hand, is exactly what enables the animal soul to blemish your godly soul, that's only when your godly soul is operating at its rational state. Once the godly soul sort of sets itself up to be invested inside of its powers and limit itself to be able to express itself through intellect, through emotion, through thought, through speech, or through action, then it's like accessible to the fool of the animal. But if it's residing on a level of pre-investiture, where it doesn't even let itself go down into the suit of Kedusha, it's just like outright being crazy beyond the rational, limited levels of the godly soul, certainly the animalistic nature has no access to it there. That's what we're saying. Like the shtus of folly, the shtus of klippa, your animal soul can't access your godly soul when it's being wild beyond investiture. So the real antidote to the shtus of klippa is the shtus of kedusha, because your lowly animal soul can't access the level of godliness that you're bringing to the table when you bring out the shtus to kedusha. And this is why we are in a generation where this is our marching orders. I mean, we are to the point that there's some religious Jews who are like afraid of Chabad. They think we're crazy. We are. We're instructed to be crazy, but it's a good crazy, right?
What else this seems also is like the Hasidus movement is built on anti-establishment. It seems like what we're saying is like the Talmid Chacham is saying, I'm not going to be limited by what you expect from me. Like I'm
right.
above the expectations of what the Talmid Chacham even is.
Can I pause you for a second, because you're trickling onto a very interesting topic, and I want to jump on that for a second.
Yeah.
That is very sensitive. That's like top secret sensitive information that you just said. Why? Because anti-establishment is also like very anti-Jewish in a sense, right? In other words, you're going to come with a new movement. Yeah. How many new movements? You want to list them that we also wholesale reject? You're going to come and like start make new rules. What are you, a reconstructionist? You're a reformist. you're whatever you are. It's like, no, you're not like in the pale of real Judaism anymore. And we're the first people to come up and say that. So here you're saying that we're anti-established. We're going to make something new. You're right, but what's the difference? Because what one is shtus de klippa, one is folly on the side of klippa, disconnecting yourself from rationality, and falling and letting yourself become prey to the animal soul, and basically just trouncing on the holy. Like we said, you can't tell the difference. An ox can't tell the difference if he's walking on earth or man. Versus being crazy and going anti-establishment in the realm of kedusha. So how do you know if you're on the right track? They both look crazy. So in fact, all the Talmidei Chachamim, and as you point out here, I'm not really disagreeing with you. I just like stealing your line because I wanted to embellish on it. I know it's totally a good point, but I'm saying it's sensitive information because what happened? Just like the so to speak, Rabbi Zera and the like were angry with Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai, and they were angry with Rabbi Shmuel, right? Rabbi Shmuel. So too, the whole Misnagdisha movement was very angry. All the Talmidei Chachamim were very angry with the Baal Shem Tov. They were very angry with the Alter Rebbe because they're saying you're going out of the box. You're like creating like a new religion. No thanks. They put him in cherib. So you see, it's very, very hard to discern. How do we discern? You have to look if this movement is coming from truth, right? And that's the thing. It's like once the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, sort of revealed who they were, that they were like the Sar of Torah in their generation, okay, so then you can take the instructions of a person who's telling you to do something crazy. But this is like a very important rule. You have to be properly guided in this way. And you have, within this, our very movement, there's a danger that one must be take into consideration when we get into this point in the mimer, the instructions for our generation. You can't just go crazy however you want to go crazy. There is still a certain limitation within your crazy.
I'm not saying like that.
And what is a limitation? You really should. If there's limitation in your crazy, it's not crazy. So how does that work? You have to connect yourself to the one who's showing you how to be crazy. Be crazy like he's crazy. Alavai, you should reach the craziness of his crazy.
But I'm saying,
You're working up to be as crazy as the Rebbe, okay, you're in good shape.
I don't know.
If you're going to say, well, the Rebbe is crazy, so I'll be crazy in my way, you're in big trouble.
I understand. I'm totally with you. I'm just saying, like...
I'm not arguing with you.
I'm just saying, like,
stealing your line.
In Hasidism, and like as a Chassid, there's like a spirit of anti-establishment. There's like a spirit of going against what's considered normal. There's like of like breaking breaking boundaries 100%. And like not necessarily just going with the flow because that's what everyone's doing.
Right.
And that's like a revolution.
Yeah.
So the problem is sometimes when that revolution becomes a system itself. Now you have a revolution where people were going against the grain. People were like breaking barriers, and people were like going outside their comfort zone and doing things that like.
I don't think that's a problem. That it becomes a system itself. In other words, why is that a problem? Let me understand what you're saying. Why is it a problem that it becomes a system?
Because the whole point of the thing is not to be a sheep.
Okay, so this is exactly the point that I was trying to warn us against. I don't agree with that. It's like, imagine, for example, you create like a I don't know. I guess the Olympics is completely treif, so I'll use it as an example in Kedusha. Hopefully it'll be shtus to Kedusha in the proper way.
Yeah.
But you take a guy who's trying to break all boundaries. Every year the next guy he wants to run a second faster than the previous guy and a second faster. Right? It's not to say the guy's going to jump out of the crowd and start running on the field naked and like beat everybody's records because he's going to do something new that the Olympics have never seen before, right? Which is like, so you can't break. That's what I'm trying to say. You still have to be wary of shtus de klippa.
Right.
So, but you need a system because the system is not telling you stay down. It's a system which is telling you do more than the next guy. But in a certain way, because if you try and take this, and on the other hand, if you look at Chabad Hasidus, we are so careful about every single minhag, and the most detailed way of how you live your life down to the smallest details of conformity. It's the same Hasidus that's telling you, like, we have a book, Sefer Minhagim, that the Rebbe himself wrote, tracing every single minute action of the previous Rebbe, that the ring has to be like this under the chuppah, and they have to go this direction, and you have to have, the guy goes out and he greets it's like every small tiny detail, the most unbelievable conformity you could possibly have, the same Torah telling you to go crazy. So I'm trying to explain to you how that works. Be crazy like the Rebbe. In other words, crazy means you're going to try and do the mitzvah, which is totally locked, in the deepest possible way, go beyond your boundaries. Right, but not, so to speak, break the conformity of what the system is and just start running naked across the road. No, run 3 seconds faster than the guy before. So within the box of conformity, you're going much, much deeper and crazy deeper than the guy who came before you, right? When it comes to having Shabbos, meals for Jews, good. So you can have Shabbos guests. The simple law is just okay. It's Achnas Sorchim. It's Abbas Yisrael. All of a sudden, I'm going to start having Jews I never met before in my house. Okay, I'm going to have 10. I'm going to have 20. I'm going to have 100. So you're still following the exact pattern, but you're just going crazy with it.
Right? No, I'm totally with you. I mean,
okay.
No one's running naked around here. But what I'm saying is,
You're not here.
I'm not here all the time. But I'm saying versus like, of course you're going to do the mitzvahs exactly like the way you're supposed to. I'm saying, but the whole point is that it doesn't get mechanical. The whole point is that the whole thing is that it's organic. This guy's he's not following orders when he's juggling the myrtle. He's not thinking about exactly how to do it. It's just an organic expression that's coming out of him, and that's Hasidus was
I don't know. I hear what you're saying. I appreciate that. There certainly has to be heart in it, but if mechanical means you're going to go out every Friday at a certain time and walk the same road and hit every shop and put tefillin on them, even if you'd rather be playing cards somewhere. That's also shtus to kedusha. In other words, I'm not so bothered by the mechanical. Who are we? We're the Baal Shem Tov. We're going to find a new derech in Avodas Hashem. We're going to break the box. No, our job is to basically mechanically, if need be, go in the crazy direction that the Rebbe sent us in. Because if you can't be crazier than him, he set up such a crazy new platform for how to be Jewish. All you got to do is follow it, and you follow it with your heart and soul, everything you got. Okay, put your heart into it. But for us, really breaking the boundary and finding something brand new, you can do it. But again, even then, you do it with your mashpia, and he has to sort of lock on. But okay.
Well, I'm saying the whole Hasidic movement is making leaders, people that are going out there because they're not necessarily just another assembly line worker.
So there's this. I don't know. I agree with you. I'm just gonna again bring the other side of the vort, which is that Lord Jonathan Sachs. I just love saying that.
Okay.
I'm not even talking about him. No, I'm just kidding. Lord Jonathan Sachs, Rabbi. He has this vort where he says the Rebbe. I think it's actually a quote from him. The Rebbe doesn't make followers; he makes leaders.
Yeah, exactly.
So Rabbi Shem Tov, who's actually the greatest follower of the Rebbe, they're very good friends. But when Rabbi Sachs spoke at the Kinnis, Shem Tov pulled me over and he's like, by the way, I never heard the Rebbe say that. On the contrary, who said we're supposed to be leaders? And he's the greatest leader we have, mind you, Shem Tov. He's the biggest thing you can do is be a follower of the Rebbe. In other words, what are you leading? Where are you going to go find? Okay, because if you follow the Rebbe, you're going to be a leader. But if the Rebbe's not making leaders, in other words, it means to make a leader. He's going to make little Rebbelas all over the place. Yes, but because they're going to become Rebbes, because they're going to follow the craziness of the Rebbe, and it's so nuts and so non-conformity that it's still like a shock to the whole world when you try and act like the Rebbe, and you try and follow the Rebbe. Right? So, again, I hear what you're saying, but I want you to hear what I'm saying. Be a follower before you figure out how to be a leader. Right? And it'll totally tickle the crazy bone just fine in your soul. You'll get crazy as you need to be, trying to perform what the Rebbe's asking us to perform. It's a very strange balance. Look, this same conversation spills over into the whole concept of what is a shliach, right? Yeah. And we always talk about this. A shliach has a shliach is a messenger. Your rabbi on campus is called a shliach. He was sent there to do a job. Yeah. And all the Hasidim in our generation, they want to become shluchim, right? They want to become not just Hasidim, they want to be sent as messengers. So a shliach, al pi halacha, has two opposite, rules involved. You know what I'm talking about, right? We've discussed it before. One is you have to be batal to the mishaleach. You have to do exactly what the mishaleach tells you, and if you veer off of it, the sender tells you, if you veer off of it, you sever your relationship as a shliach. The other one is you have to be a bar das. You have to be an intelligent person. Cheresh, shotev, katan, these three categories of law that a child and a person who doesn't have all their wits about them, they're not in the category of being a shliach in the first place. You cannot appoint a child to be a shliach. Why? Because he's not bardas. He doesn't have a seichel. He can't do things on his own. He's not like a leader.
Which intelligence? When you say intelligence, then?
So the idea, someone who's has disabled in the realm of mind, right? You can't make him into a shliach.
No, it's like to qualify. You have to be, because you said.
No, any normal person basically who's not challenged in some kind of a serious psychological way, then he could be a shliach, right?
Yeah.
But what do you see here? There's two opposites involved in this. On one hand, you have to be absolutely nullified to the instructions of the sender, and if you veer off it, right, left, you lost it. You no longer have that title. On the other hand, you're not able to have that title if you're someone who just only goes in their own way and cannot think for themselves. Right?
Right.
So how does this go together? This is kind of the struggle that we're discussing. You have to think for yourself within the confined parameters of what you've been sent to do. If your shlichus winds up getting crazy out of the box, mamish crazy, you're not a shliach anymore. You've gone and become like a leader. And like, we don't need leaders like that. Right? So, okay, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just sort of bringing the other side of the conversation.
Yeah.
So, Rabbi.
Yeah.
This thing with the rabbi.
Yeah.
With the myrtle. And
Okay.
everything, this somewhat mirrors David HaMelech's behavior, and then the whole thing that followed after that. But we know the story, so didn't that set a precedent? Why was this an issue? That someone's like.
It's always an issue when you.
Roused for God.
It's always an issue when you rise up and go break the boundaries. The whole world is going along,
But didn't David
being in
do
there.
that for
Yeah,
us?
okay. So you're saying it could have been a different example from previous times in history. I'm saying that this was already an example, and yet when the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe did it, everyone went crazy. So in other words, no one's ever really just ready to accept this, because that's what it means to go crazy. It's always gonna be something out of the bounds of what normal people are thinking. So even if we have a precedent for crazy, when it comes up again, we're still against it. You know what I mean? It's not where a normal person resides. The Rebbe's trying to make it be that it's where we normally reside. He wants to be a generation of us being in a realm of shtus to kedusha, because he's saying it's really our only hope to stay connected to the game. So long as you go into the realm of normal and rationality, we're just too weak anymore to stand up to the fog of our nefesh habahamis. We're in a generation where that fog has been given a tremendous amount of leeway over us. So the only way we can really get to it is to stay above water the whole time. Just be in a realm where you don't even make sense, so that the nefesh habahamis doesn't have a holding on you. And this is like a whole seder of avoda in our lives, that we're doing things lifni mishur sadin, beyond the line. Okay, let's go on a little bit.
Yeah.
So, okay.
That was a long one.
I'm saying, I think that's what's
See,
attractive.
I knew that was gonna
That's
happen.
attractive. That's what's attractive to Hasidus, is it has that spirit of anti-establishment in it.
All right, I'm with you.
It was a good break. It was a very good break. I talked about good breaks.
Okay. So we're saying is, whatever it was, whether it was the shtusei the saba or the shitasei the saba, whatever he was doing, it was clearly better than the rest. It got him a pillar of fire. Shumedrega gavoa v'nifla b'ma'od ma'od. The line starts minadas. It's a level which is very wondrously high. And why did he specifically choose a wedding to sort of bring out his crazy hat? The ish v'isha harizachu harishchina shroi b'neihem. So he kind of has a little non sequitur, if you ask me. In this, it's definitely connected, but it looks like on the outset, what's it doing in here? He goes on to a whole explanation of a wedding. So the way I understand what this is doing in here is he's talking about why at a wedding, at least on the pshat level, why at a wedding suddenly we found this behavior of Rav Shmuel, where he wasn't necessarily going like that all the time. It's because he was accessing a certain level of kedusha which is available at a wedding, which is sort of what brought him to such a state. And this is that if a man and a woman are meritorious, the Shechina dwells in their union. Where do we see this? A beautiful vort, ish hu eish yud, v'isha hu eish he. Right? The word in Hebrew for man, ish, is the same word as fire, but it has a yud in it. And the word for woman is fire, but it has a hey in it. Because when they merit, az harihu yud k. When they're together, this one brings the yud, this one brings the k, and they have God in their midst. I won't say the opposite is obvious until you're a chassan. You don't need to know. But when there's no yud and there's no k, what do you have left? A lot of it. Uba begiloi.
A lot of fire.
A lot of fire. Double fire. So you have to have God in your union, or you don't have a union at all. You have just a big balagan.
Yeah.
But when you have, because what's the idea? Why does it create such a union of wonder. Of course you have fire, you have man and a woman. There couldn't be more different than each other, more opposite, right? So if they're going to come together and God is not in the picture, something so high that it's able to unify opposites and negate the ego of each one, and they're sort of just like lost in its glory, like it says, two generals, the head of the Marines versus the head of the Navy, each one of them is like knows how to, tear the whole world apart. They have to be sort of sure of themselves, and their lives are on the line, and they have to make these kinds of very, very self-centered, self-confident decisions. And yet, when they come before the president or the king, right, each of them stands at attention. And if they would come in contact with each other, because neither one has sort of rulership over the other, they could be head to head, and it would be like two fires. But when they come in front of something higher, when they realize they're working on the same team, and they're basically nullified before the true power of the whole government, so they stand in attention and they nullify to each other. So too, it says that Osei Shalom Bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, he who makes peace on his heights, he'll make peace for us. Why does there need to be peace in his heights? Heights means heaven. Is there a war going on in heaven? So it says yes, there's the angel of fire, the angel of water, Michael and Gabriel, Chesed and Gevurah, and if they were left to their own devices, there would be a war going on. But he makes peace in his heights because God is there. So they sort of humble themselves. And the same thing when it comes to man and woman. So what's humbling them is the Yud and the K that's inside of them. They're built with an ability to have I have a Yud, you have a Hey, let's get together, we can find God. Right? So the idea is that when this level is found, what does it accomplish? What does the Yud and the K in a man and woman's union bring? Ba begilu binyan adei ad. It creates what we call, and the blessing that we give to a chassan and kala is a binyan adei ad, which means an everlasting edifice. May you build an everlasting house in Israel. What do you mean everlasting? You just made a connection which is never going to go away. In 1,000 years, your bond, and if all goes well, we give them the blessing that God should be in their midst, which means you're going to have children and grandchildren, oskim b'Torah mitzvahs, occupied in Torah mitzvahs, which means the line that you're beginning right now will literally go on forever. There is no cessation. Why is it able to be a forever? Where does forever come from? Only because the Eibishter, who is eternal and forever, dwells inside of such a marriage. Nothing else lasts that long.
Should we make this Dira B'Tachtonim now in this binyan of this?
What's a Dira B'Tachtonim? It's a base of Mikdash which can never be destroyed. So that's what a little marriage is, right? It's a little base of Mikdash. We already said it. Our bodies, our lives are base of Mikdash. This is the everlasting base of Mikdash. So long as you have the blessing and you do it right, your line, you're part of a line of Jews that's 4,000 years old. That your great grandparents, they did something, looks like up until now, eternal, right? Because it's been Yiddishkeit. Okay. Im kein harizeh madrega gavoa. So if that's the situation over here, it is a very high level, to say the least. Lechein bishvil zeh. Therefore, for that zach legiloim nailim beyoser the afsik amura denora. So because he sort of came together and celebrated that particular mitzvah, he was honoring this in this way of beyond das, so he merited for this pillar of fire to separate him from the rest of the world. And what is the pillar of fire? It's literally a revelation of God, open and revealed to all. In other words, he brought a full-on miracle and godly revelation to the world. I mean, people saw a pillar of fire. So in other words, he was able to bring godliness out of his shadows and shine into the world through this act of craziness. This is the way that you bring the godly soul, that it's no longer, it's impervious to cover up, right? When you bring that level of your soul to the game, there's no animal soul, there's no natural world that can block it. So what did he do? He merited a full-on revelation of God. Ubira inyan, and the idea is, so can you. That's why these Chabad houses are so darn successful. It's like you can't keep them down, It's just they start in the basement, in the back of a truck, and within 3, 4, 10 years, they're a $3, $4, $5 million building, and like the place is packed to the gills every time. It's like, what's going on over here? Because it's mad to do such a thing, and you bring down an open revelation of God if you stay with it. Bira in Yanhu, and the way it works. Hine Orin Sof Hariles Makshava Tafisa Bei Klal. So the Orin Sof is what we call no thought can grasp it at all. It is God Himself, and it's ungraspable. No, you can't make a vessel that big that can wrap itself around the Or Ein Sof. It's not only beyond what you can understand, or what any being can understand. It's beyond the whole comprehension of understanding. Understanding itself is something that had to be invented, right? Like there had to be the bringing forth into existence of the concept of chokhmah, of wisdom, of grasping something. So the Or Ein Sof precedes the invention of wisdom. So it's not only beyond comprehension; it's beyond the category of comprehension. Tekol asaga. Hinigama yoser nailis. Anything that you're going to grasp, even if it's the highest form of grasp, the Rebbe's grasp, right? The angelic grasp beyond this world, harihu begeder hasaga al kol panim. It's still in some dimension called graspable, right? So they say, for example, if it says in the Tanya that if you want to try to understand what does it mean to grasp God and how silly that is, it's like saying to a person, here, grasp this idea with your hands. Right? That the hands are not a vehicle to grasping God. So too, your brain, or any brain for that matter, is not a vehicle with which you can grasp Hashem, because He's not graspable. Right. So no matter how highfalutin an idea is, and there's some pretty highfalutin ideas, right, going into like the infinite, realms of spiritual dimensions, where the comprehension, sometimes we talk about the sun and the moon. It says in the Rambam that the sun and the moon are conscious beings. Right. Not just the sun and the moon, but all the stars. They're aware of themselves and they're aware of us. Yeah. What's going on? It's a pretty big entity. It's bigger than a dinosaur. What's going on? What is He's aware of Himself? He's aware of us. What's He thinking? He's got some kind of an unbelievable grasp of God, so much so that it drives him to be in a constant state of flying billions of miles around in circles trying to grasp God. That's what it says. The whole pathway of the stars is really the dance, the song of these celestial bodies flying through the air like a person's like running to greet their maker in a constant state. He never stops. So he's pretty excited. And he's just a physical object. Imagine the angelic sons. So he knows, nonetheless, all of that is still in the realm of grasp. Whereas the Or Ein Sof is leis machshava tefisa beklal. No thought can grasp him. He's out of the boundary of grasp. Masha einu begeder hasaga, something which is not even you can't even attempt to grasp it. Hari efshar yutfas basaga klal. It cannot be grasped in any way, in any hasaga, in any grasp. And this is the Or Ein Sof. The Isa b'Sefer Shel Beinim, Perik Yud Ches, as it says in the Tanya, Legabi HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'mayla min haseichel v'hadas, that He's above the whole investiture of grasp, leis machshava tefisa beklal. That's what it means. No thought can grasp Him at all. V'akol kipsayim etzlo. Every single one, even the spheres of Atzilus, are like total fools before Him. Like a fool, you come into the class, you don't understand what a person's saying. It's like he's speaking another language. Right? You can't grasp one thing that he's saying. This is what the greatest minds, the spheros of Chochmah Atzilus, Chochmah Ilah, is like a fool, has no idea whatsoever the Eibishter is before Hashem. As it says in Tehillim, I'm a fool, and I don't know anything. I was like an animal before you, trying to explain Chassidus to a cow. Right? Seriously, just give it a go. You've tried?
It's hard.
It's impossible. You can't do it. I've tried also. No. Right? And the idea is that he doesn't have what it takes. So this is what it is. All beings before Hashem, they don't have what it takes. There's no way of conveying this. So he says, I'm like a fool before you. I was like an animal before you. But then the pasuk goes on to say something very, very strange. David HaMelech. Va'ani tamid imach. He says, I'm a fool before you. I'm an animal before you. But I'm always before you. I'm always with you. Meaning what? That specifically because I'm an animal, so to speak, non-intelligent being, I make myself like one, and I'm a fool before you, that's what enables me to truly be continuously with you, mamish. Because if I'm going to try and be with you, by grasping you and understanding you, we've already established that kind of relationship just can't really work out between you and me, right? You and God. It's not. We're not gonna have a kind of grasp where we really get each other, right? Because you can't understand a thing. So the only way you'll actually be with him is if you're with him on his terms. You don't even try to understand him. You relate to him in a way which is you're his sort of loyal cow. You're not trying to be his loyal servant where you're going to get to the inner recesses of what he really means.
Yeah.
Your real approach of sort of being with him is in a non-intellectual way. Because if you try to be with him in an intellectual way, good, you can do that because he does do us a nice favor and dresses up in intellect. And he created wisdom, he created understanding, and therefore you can understand him. But by definition, when you relate to him in that way, you're not relating to him anymore. You're relating to some outfit that he put on. You're grabbing his vest and his fine shoes, but he's not in them. Because by definition, if you think you can hold on to it, it's not him that you're holding on to because he's beyond comprehension. So the only way you can actually be with him is by being in a state of crazy. Not using your brain.
Did he put himself in the Torah?
He dressed himself up in the Torah. In other words, so the wisdom of the Torah
He's gallery, 100%.
but not so. So this is a whole parak in Tanya that tries to explain this little contradiction. On one hand, he put himself into letters and ideas, and you can learn those letters and ideas. So you say, I grasped God. I understood a Tosafos. You think you understood God because you understood a Tosafos? It seems silly, obviously. We wouldn't even dream of such a thing. So what does it mean? He put himself in the Torah.
Right.
So it's like a mitzvah. Just like, you wouldn't think that you've grasped God and you've understood him because you wrapped a cow leather strap around your arm and you put on tefillin, and yet you're going to say, I grasped God.
Yeah.
Why did you grasp him? Because you're not even, again, you're like an animal with him. You're not even trying to understand him. You're just sort of like doing something crazy, quite frankly. What are you wrapping on your arm there, guy? Right? And if you try to explain it, it just makes yourself more silly. Like, what are you doing?
It's cow skin.
Right? It's cow skin after all. Don't try and explain that to me. So what you're doing is any mitzvah. Mitzvahs by definition, we've talked about this many times, they're beyond the realm of understanding. Every mitzvah is essentially a chok.
Okay.
And so you're attaching yourself to Hashem without comprehension. So when you learn Torah, strangely, even though Torah, the way you do the mitzvah is not with your arm, it's with your mind.
Right.
So you're grasping something, but you're not grasping the Or Ein Sof when you understand the Tosafos. But you are grasping God because just like, what's the difference if I put the tefillin and the mitzvah on my hand versus I put it on my brain? At that moment, you're grasping him because the real him is found inside of these mitzvahs.
Right.
But not so much that you're wrapping yourself around him, but you're sort of binding yourself with him.
Right.
That's what it means. So Torah is no different than any mitzvah.
Right, but it's not.
It's just the way you do it is by using your brain instead of using your hand.
Right, but it's not his shoe or his vest or anything. It's him, right?
It's not what?
It's not his shoe or his.
No, the intellect, like the Tosafos that you understand, is his shoe and his vest, right? Because he's encloaking himself into ideas, and so those ideas are graspable to you. You understand? It's a logical, historical account, and you can use your intellect and get, or you can sit here and learn Chassidus for that matter, and understand the Or Ein Sof, its connection with the Tzimtzum and the 10 spheros. You're always understanding God. What do you think you're understanding God? In other words, what you're doing is you're attaching your brain, right? Just like you would attach your arm to Him. The only way is when it comes to the mitzvah of Torah, you do that mitzvah with your sensory powers of understanding as opposed to your physical arm. But the idea is the same, is that ultimately he invested his true infinite self into that area. So when you grasp the Tosafos, ultimately you actually are grasping the Or Ein Sof, but not because you understand the Tosafos.
Right.
But it is because you understand the Tosafos.
Right.
Right? It's an interesting thing. All right, we're going to have to hold here. Shechina.
What time do you go to Ascent on Friday?
At 10 o'clock.
1 hour?
Yeah. No, it's for the scent crowd. I don't know if they like to buck them to go over there.
So he puts his essence in letters,
Puts the essence in letters, but
So when you learn the letters, you're learning his essence.
Yeah.
You know the letters are not his essence, but they are at the same time.
learning the letters, you're